So let's just get started today. So the topic of the webinar today is the humanization of sales and marketing at scale. My name is Devin Rose. A little bit more information about me. I work for eBridge Marketing Solutions, which is a boutique marketing agency that serves IT service firms like MSPs and web hosts and data centers and vendors and really anyone in that ecosystem. We were established in 2001, so we've been around the block a little bit and understand this space. And we're a full-service marketing agency, primarily with a focus on digital, but we are a full-service agency. So if there's any questions, not necessarily even related to this presentation, but just marketing related in general, I'd be more than happy to address them at the end. And you might be more familiar with my boss, who's Heartland Ross, and he runs the Host Broker, which is a brokerage for MSPs, web hosts, a similar ecosystem to what we help with the on the marketing side. The main difference is that Heartland also helps with the brokerage of IP addresses. This was, the Host Broker was founded out of client demand. We were a marketing agency first, had a lot of clients who were interested in selling and buying for that matter. So ended up starting the Host Broker. And if you are interested, feel free to contact us. There is a free evaluation available. So, we during this coronavirus times, we were wanting to redo our website, and we were talking about from a strategic perspective about what do we really want to emphasize on our website, and we came up with the conclusion that we wanted to emphasize our team. So this slide here shows a panel that we ended up putting as the hero image on our homepage, and it is essentially a collage of us, of our team, caricatures of our team, done in like a Zoom-like setting. And we'd considered some other alternatives before we landed on this. We wanted to, perhaps in normal times we would have gotten together for a group photo, but obviously with COVID, that's a little bit more difficult. So this was the workaround we came up with. And I just find it so interesting that during these times, like, we weren't thinking about this when we came up with this decision, but it's just amazing how the digital communication tools that we're using these days, they are so common that, even for our website, that's what we ended up going with. But, I think that I'm not alone in my feeling that all these digital communication tools, whether it's Slack for communicating with, your work, or if it's Discord to communicate, with friends, or Zoom like we're doing today, they're great. They're wonderful. It's certainly thankful that we have them, and during these times, and they're a good mitigation. But there is a certain something missing. It's not the same as getting together for something like a photo. Having that camaraderie. There's that humanized feeling that is missing from these digital communications. So even though we should be thankful for them, I think it's also important to remember the downsides, and that kind of leads us into the presentation for today. As a marketer, I can tell you a little bit about the marketing perspective, and we marketers really like to focus on achieving scale. Um, and we typically do this through using software as a service tools, whether it's our social media tools like Hootsuite, which lets you broadcast messages across multiple channels quite easily, whether it's marketing automation tools like HubSpot, which lets you do, email marketing and inbound marketing at scale. Or just there's a whole bunch of tools out there that marketers use these days, even WordPress, like the ability for a marketer who's not tech savvy to go in there and to schedule blogs to be posted in the future on an automated basis. This lets us do marketing at scale, and especially for like IT service providers, where typically the marketing departments for IT service providers aren't huge. Especially for small to mid-size, we're talking about maybe maybe a couple people or a single person. Having these software as a service tools to allow these small departments to achieve scale has a huge amount of benefit. It allows us to get this mass messaging that I have on the slide here, to cast our net widely. And also, to have a kind of a set it and forget it approach. And this phrase "set it and forget it" does have a little bit of a negative connotation, but because you do want to be, checking in on your campaigns and making sure things are running smoothly. But the benefit to it is it does allow us to scale with relatively little manpower. So, that's really the marketing perspective. Is the goal is to achieve scale. But then we can compare with the sales perspective, where where marketers are looking to scale using mass messaging. Sales is looking to develop rapport using individualized messaging. That's really how you end up closing leads, especially for IT service providers, where so many of the claims made by IT service providers are similar. That's something that actually marketing agencies struggle with too. It can be difficult to differentiate service providers because they're all saying the same things or very similar things. So that's why the emphasis so often is about relationships and developing that rapport so that you can close leads. And so that's really very much the sales perspective, is about having individualized messaging, providing that human touch that is frankly missing in our a lot of our digital communication tools, but these days, but doing that as much as possible to end up closing the leads. So, there's diverging perspectives there. There's the mass messaging versus the rapport and individualized messaging. So the question really becomes, how do leaders of IT service firms help bridge the gap between sales and marketing, and to essentially find a happy medium where it's the best of both worlds? So let's talk a little bit more about what marketing at scale looks like. And I mentioned HubSpot as a marketing automation system. I did some research recently that showed that the majority of MSPs who are in CRN's top 150 list were using HubSpot. So it's definitely the most popular for MSPs, and the same as for other IT service firms as well. And the main benefit of like a marketing automation system is you get these templated emails and content pieces. So going back to the idea of how small marketing teams can achieve scale with marketing tools, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Where back in the day where you'd have to design something from scratch, now you can get something that's good enough, like design wise, to add in your own content, or maybe even tweak content that's already been pre-written. And it allows you to do something like email campaigns with way less effort than would have been in the past. um, One of the challenges with marketing at scale for IT service providers in particular is there's lots of different decision makers are typically involved. It's not just technical people making decisions about IT services these days. It's financial people, marketing people, even like, more general people like like a CEO. Um, and that's especially true the larger the organization is that you're trying to reach. So you end up with like, you can't just send out a security related content piece via your marketing automation system. There's, you have to account for different people's perspectives, and you end up with a lot of permutations of different content. So, one of the values that or the value that marketing automation systems bring is a content library, which helps you to keep track of different content pieces and to iterate on them as necessary, so you can customize them to who you want to be reaching. So, to a large extent, the question about humanization versus scale, it comes down to at what point should you be automating and at what point should you not be automating. And this roughly follows our journey down the sales funnel here. So I have a fairly generic sales funnel on the left-hand side there. So, at the top of the funnel, when you're in the awareness, or perhaps, dipping or, starting to go into the engagement stage a little bit too, it is more about the marketing perspective, where it's the set it and forget it. You're casting a very wide net. So, you tend to prioritize the scale above the humanization. But then as you start to move down the funnel towards, people at the bottom, or, people who are actually existing customers, it becomes way more appropriate to use the humanization. Um, and then really in the middle of the funnel, it's up to you and your team to use discretion. Um, so I want to give you an example of, personalization gone awry. Let Personalization at the top of the funnel, when scale is more important, can actually achieve the opposite effects as was intended. So yeah, probably if the attendees today have experienced a situation where you visited a website and then you visit a website for the first time, and then that website starts serving you ads as you're browsing online. That is called retargeting. It's a marketing tactic. It can be done well, but if it's done poorly and too aggressively, it comes across as really creepy and too aggressive and too personalized. So like, let's say that you visit a particular product page, and then you see an ad that references that specific product. In my opinion, that's just too personalized. It's just the person then realizes that, oh, you're tracking where I go, you're tracking what pages I'm visiting, and it's just a little bit too on the nose with the personalization, and is counterintuitive. It actually turns people off, and it doesn't develop that rapport. It makes them skeptical of you. And then we contrast that with, let's say, at the bottom of the funnel, if you send out an email that's kind of very clearly generic, not addressed to the good lead or the existing customer that you have, again, that's going to be a turnoff. The person is going to be like, hey, I know Devin. Why is he not like talking to me like I'm a real person? So I think at the top of the funnel and at the bottom of the funnel, it's fairly obvious which priorities that you should be looking at. It's that middle of the funnel where there's the discretions needed, and it's a little bit of an artful thing to think about too. It's not like a hard set thing where in the middle of the funnel it's very clear this should be prioritized for scale, this should be prioritized for humanization. It's more about using discretion, thinking artfully about it, and really trying to apply common sense to the communications throughout the middle of the funnel. So now let's talk about some practical examples about how to humanize. And a lot of these aren't huge revelations. Again, it's really about applying common sense artfully throughout the funnel. So, you know, um, aligning sales, marketing, and customer care. So, your salespeople aren't the only people who are sending emails to your customers and leads. And so, if let's say that your sales emails are coming across very personalized, but your marketing emails and customer care emails are coming across very unpersonalized. That's a problem. It's not, your brand's not coming across consistently. So, just getting your marketing and customer care teams and sales teams together to make sure that, there's a mutual understanding about what communications are going out and what tone should be sought. Um, that will help you get, a more humanized communications. Converting data into humanized insight. So there are countless ways that this can be done. But let's say that you start seeing in one of your customer or lead databases that there's some new contacts that are showing up in a different city than you were accustomed to seeing for a particular account. This could be an indication that they are opening a brand new office. So you know that would be an indication for someone like an MSP that there's more endpoints, more users, and there's an opportunity for some additional business to support that office. And a savvy salesperson would reach out, to their contact and to offer those services and to solve that problem. Um, but yeah, there's many ways that you can add humanized insights to data, and it's a skillful marketer will be able to pull those insights out. A big one is don't spam. And sending relevant information frequently is just too frequently is just as bad as sending irrelevant information less frequently. Us marketers don't do a great job of this a lot of the time. But generally speaking, try to get your your sales and marketing emails to follow like a cadence that reflects a real human. When I'm doing business, I'm trying to follow up with people. I don't follow up super aggressively because I know it's going to turn people off. I wait a couple days if someone hasn't got back to me, even longer sometimes, and that's what your email should be doing. Your marketing automation system should be doing too. You don't want to be sending people emails super frequently. How else can you humanize? Well, I have a nice little mugshot of Bill Gates on the right-hand side there, alluding to the last bullet, which is showing your face. And today I am practicing what I preach in this regard, and got my nice bald head on the on the screen here. And um, you know, especially with COVID right now, we can't show our faces. We can't develop that individual rapport in a real life setting. So a good way to mitigate it is just to show your face. And in terms of humanization, seeing someone's expressions and actually seeing them in it goes a long way. And sometimes even me, I like to hide behind my keyboard a little bit. But yeah, I am trying to practice what I preach here and get in front of people a little bit more and to develop that rapport. Providing a digital self-service with a human off-ramp. So that that's a really important too, because people want to do their own research. They want to go onto your website and find out what you're all about. But at a certain point, they're going to want to talk to a real human. So just making that easy. And some common sense ways this can be done is just by having strong call to actions on your website, like perhaps at the bottom of every page. Make it easy for them to contact you if they have any questions. Don't make them search around for it. Perhaps even consider a live chat. We've had a little bit of mixed results with live chats because you do need to have enough traffic come into your website to make it worthwhile. Someone does have to monitor a live chat, so there's a little bit of you know a work burden put on the IT service firm who has a live chat set up on their website. And if you don't have a lot of volume coming to your website, people might not start chatting to you, so it's not really worthwhile. But if you do have a significant volume of traffic coming to your website, a live chat is a great way to offer that human off ramp. And segmenting your database. So this is most applicable for marketing automation or just email marketing in general. But going back to the idea of there being many decision makers who have different needs, you don't want to be sending the same emails to everybody. Likewise, if we think about our leads in terms of where they are in the funnel, it's more appropriate, for instance, to send kind of more aggressive call to actions for people who are at the bottom of the funnel. That would be inappropriate at the top of the funnel. So you want to segment your database in terms of how qualified the leads are, and also their job title or job responsibility, and then make sure that you're communicating to them effectively based on what they actually care about. Speaking the language of your target customers, I mean, this is a big one. We hear from a lot of clients who come to us after working with other agencies that they just weren't able to really capture the language of like IT service firms. The stereotypical example I like to bring up is not capitalizing the P in WordPress. That things like that, they're small. It doesn't seem like a significant thing, and maybe one-offs aren't significant, but if you come across like you're not understanding the language that your customers speak, you're just not going to come across very credibly. And it's going to turn people off, and it's going to make you seem like you're just kind of another generic service provider who doesn't actually understand your target market. Writing for humans, not for bots. This is relevant both for like email marketing, and web content. For email marketing, no one's gonna read your stuff if you're spamming out like bot-like content. And then for like your website content, it relates to SEO. So it used to be kind of I don't know. It used to be kind of a good, not a good, but an effective gray hat tactic in SEO would be like really overly sprinkling your website with relevant keywords. Some people would even do stuff like, make the text white and like just list a bunch of relevant keywords. But Google's caught on these days. They're smart. That stuff worked like 10, 20 years ago. But Google has figured out ways to deal with that nowadays. And you may as well just write for humans, because that's what Google recommends you do anyway. If you start writing, writing for the audience of search engines primarily, it's going to be counter effective, because that's not the best practice for SEO. Best practice for SEO is write for humans, make it interesting, make it engaging, and Google will realize that as well, and they'll even be able to look at metrics like say time on site and bounce rate and stuff like that, and that all plays into your organic ratings too. So um, don't overdo it. Don't it's smart to take a strategic approach to the content you're writing, to do some SEO research, to realize the keywords that people are searching for, and to incorporate those in like a way that seems organic. But you know, err on the side of not doing that too much. You can really overdo it, and you're better off just writing based on what you think is interesting, and in a clear way that actually gets your points across. That's what's best for SEO. And then, finally here, the last point is just really educating and encouraging your sales and marketing teams to apply discretion. Again, this is like to a large extent, this is like an artful thing, especially in the middle of the funnel. It's not like there's hard set rules on it. It's about understanding the kind of different poles. You have the marketing pole and the sales pole on the other end, and understanding their perspectives and when they should apply and when you should have that happy medium. So, really education and encouraging the departments to work together is really going to be the big key to success in terms of having a humanized approach that still lets you achieve that marketing scale that we so want, but also balances that humanized aspect that the sales and marketing teams are desiring themselves. So that concludes the presentation for today, and thank you very much for joining. And I just wanted to conclude with this slide, which has a little bit more information about the marketing services that eBridge offers, and also has information for how to contact me if you have any questions. And yeah, at this point, I'll take questions as well. Just, oops, let me go to the last slide here. So I don't see any questions coming through. One thing I was wondering about, if people were going to ask about is, a variety of different tools that can be used for marketing automation. I mentioned HubSpot, and I did some research recently that showed they're really popular with top MSPs. There's a lot of options available though. HubSpot's not the only one. HubSpot's good. It has some downsides too, which I can address, but I guess the biggest downside with HubSpot really is it is a little bit pricey. So it makes more sense for kind of mid to large size MSPs than it does for small MSPs. But there are some good options available for small MSPs as well. One that is tailored specifically for IT service providers is called Mind Matrix. This has, all the templating, the marketing automation that you want, the content library, and they also have a countless other tools that they've built in. And it's really affordably priced. Like depending on the configuration that you're looking for, you're talking about hundreds of dollars per month, not thousands. So that's a really good option for a lot of MSPs and other IT service firms. Another one that is competing directly with HubSpot, and is a little bit lower on the price is called SharpSpring. And the way I would characterize that one is it has pretty much all the features of HubSpot, not quite as polished, but it's all there. And where HubSpot likes to try to get you to utilize their system as much as possible. So, they want you using their marketing automation. They want you using their social media tools. They want you using their CMS and getting you into their CMS. Um, SharpSpring doesn't really care about that stuff. They're totally happy just to kind of, you can use the marketing automation functionality. They have a ton of API integrations available. And it's also lower price. So, that's a really good option for smaller MSPs, and also for people who don't really like having to join like an ecosystem, who might want to kind of keep their other systems apart, but integrated. That SharpSpring is a really good choice for that. And if you are interested in any help with marketing automation, eBridge can help from the content creation to the strategizing to the setting up of the lead scoring to everything that's involved. It's quite a big effort. So it's a big effort, but it's worthwhile because it ends up getting you that scale that we've talked about today. And so maybe I'll just give an opportunity for one more opportunity for any other questions here. Alrighty, well, if there's no other questions, then we'll end the webinar there. And thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions that come up after the presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at devin@ebridgemarketingsolutions.com. Thank you very much.